Welcome to the daily update. It is Monday, August 3rd, 2026. Not much going on in the news cycle. It's the same old Monday. Trump is saying that Iran is begged us not to attack them last night. And then what's odd is that just a few minutes ago, somebody, actually it was Dave Janda that sent it to me, sent me an X post where a Navy Trident sub commander was relieved of duty. And of course, everybody's reading into it. Let me put some thoughts at ease, and I'll talk through this from two or three different angles. So the first one is, and the first piece of this is, commanders are relieved from command all the time. It's not an uncommon thing. You can be relieved command for a variety of reasons. You can fail an inspection. You can have complaints filed against you by your troops. You can be brought up by EEOC charges, and that's a big was a big thing. I'm sure it still is. I'm sure it's probably exponentially more any accusations exponentially more damaging these days than it used to be. You can be relieved for just because the commander doesn't think you're capable. There's a variety of reasons. I've seen commanders relieved for a variety of reasons, and I've also seen commanders extended because they were so good at what they were doing. So you see both sides of the spectrum, and it doesn't really mean anything. Now, if this commander was relieved because he refused to execute a lawful order or execute an order he thought was unlawful, that's a whole different story, right? Because it means a couple of things. The first thing it means is that he was given, and by the way, just so we're all on the same page, the way this works, if a Trident sub is going to launch, there's a very specific protocol for the way that it's supposed to go down. So they're supposed to receive an authenticated emergency access message, right? EAM. And EAMs have been around since the dawn of time. Well, since the dawn of the nuke business, I'll go that far. So EAMs are need to be authenticated. So in the Air Force, they have authenticator tickets, and those authenticator tickets are in the safe that you've all seen on two locks, two different crew members, and the tickets are thrown into a safe and locked up. And when you get an EAM, you get a warning message that tells you to pop the locks and look for a specific ticket, right? It's probably the same in the Navy from what I remember, but again, when it's going back 30 years, so I'm sure it's changed a lot. The ICBM forces haven't changed at all. Right there, they're still using equipment that was put in place in 93 or 92 or 93. So it's called a REACT console. It's a rapid execution and combat targeting console that was put in place instead of the old analog consoles way back when. So I'm sure that if he got an EAM and he didn't execute that, he was relieved of his command. But that brings up a very interesting point. That means that he was given a launch order. And if you know anything about the Trident system, the D4 and the D5 system, those have multiple warheads on them, not one big warhead, multiple warheads. So it means that if he was given an authenticated order and he didn't launch, well, of course he's going to be relieved of command, right? But it means somebody gave him the order to preemptively launch that missile or missiles. I want you to take that in for a second, because if that's true, which I'm not saying it is, because there's no context around this commander's relief. But I'm just wargaming out what that would look like if he was given an authenticated order. That means that somebody gave the order to launch, right? So, and if that's true, if that's even plausible, of course it's plausible. If it's true, and that's the reason he was relieved, then that means Trump issued an order to National Command Authority to issue the order to the sub to launch. And that puts us in great, great, great peril. That conversation, number one, the conversation happened. Number two, the order was issued. And number three, it got all the way to the sub, and the sub commander said, no, I'm not going to do that. And hopefully the whole boat said that. Everybody in the boat was like, no, we're not doing that. And that would be a good thing, because it means the adults in the room said, we are not going to escalate this to a nuclear conflict. But, again, this is hyperbole, because there's no explanation around why this commander was relieved other than loss of confidence. But that's where everybody went with it, was that he was given a launch order and said, no, I'm not going to do that. So we don't know. On the other side of the fence, there's another post that's circling around. Swirling is a better word for it. And this one is an Israeli general that, well, the best way to say it is, he said, 1 million Palestinian lives are, one Israeli life is worth 1 million Palestinian lives. I look at this rhetoric as incitement, because, look, I spent a bunch of time this weekend, while I wasn't trying to get an article posted on Substack. In fact, I did post an article on Substack about the whole lone wolf idea of prepping, and I'll talk through that at the end of this. But suffice it to say that I did some poking around on social media this weekend just to see how prevalent the bot conversations were and the AI conversations. And I will tell you that there is, I would say right now, it's about 60 to 70% AI to human. And I would think that in 6 months, it'll be more than 90% of what you see on social media will be all AI and bots having conversation. And you can pick them out, because they're very generic statements. Some of them are very generic. Some of them are very pointed, but they're all targeted at very specific talking points. And it's easy to see them, especially Facebook's like dead giveaway, right? Somebody will post something and you'll see automatically within like 30 seconds, you'll see like 10 comments pop up on that post. And they're all just generic comments. Basically, it's a bot or an AI talking to itself, trying to generate and artificially generate engagement. I've seen that on X. Case in point, I was talking to this guy today, and he asked me what I did in the military. I told him, I did information warfare, and he said, "Well, that's a very interesting. It's a very interesting career." And he goes, "How much of what we see is bots?" I'm like, "Over 70%." And he just stopped talking. He's like, "Really?" I go, "Yeah, within 6 months, it'll be over 90. Because what we see in social media, especially on X has curated their feed to where if you post anything that hits a keyword, it's going to fill your entire feed with whatever that keyword is. And if you think I'm joking, go out to X and post anything generic with our greatest ally. And then tell me what happens to your feed the moment you do that. Plus or negative, positive or negative, doesn't matter, right? Post anything that's about our America's greatest ally, and you will see the bots explode. And that's the bellwether, because it tells me that not only is there a huge push to, of course, it goes back to Israel lost the narrative on October 9th in 2024, right? Was it 24 or 23? I've lost track. This Gaza thing's been going on so long. But the day after is when they lost the war. When they hit the hospital, sorry, you've lost the information fight. And they're continuing to lose the information fight. If you look at the vitriol in the social media posts when Netanyahu posts something, It is exponentially off the charts. And you can make the case both ways, that it's actual humans or that it's bots and humans. And I will tell you that I think that a lot of the backlash is artificially driven as incitement. And if globally that picture, as you expand it out, that picture goes all the way to religious incitement. Muslims against Jews, Muslims against Christians, Christians against, Christians against some religion, et cetera, et cetera. And it's laced throughout all of that curated feed that's presented to you. So they used to do this in primetime and local news. They would literally put the most insightful and the most emotional stories first, right? Case in point, this weekend was the shooter in Idaho Falls. Shooter goes to an In-N-Out, doesn't get the animal sauce on his fries, goes to his car, gets his AR, starts shooting people because he didn't get the animal sauce, whatever the case may be. He gets taken down by a guy with its concealed carry. And by the way, he was carrying an FN-57, which is interesting. If you know anything about the 5.7 millimeter, it's a FN load. It looks like a mini 5.56 round. It's like a little bit bigger than a 22. But basically looks like a mini 5.56 round. It's got a very high muzzle velocity, and he was carrying a suppressor, which means that thing's about, let me get it from that thing's about that long, right? So, you're like pulling it out of the holster. So, but anyway, little or no local coverage in the local news, little or no national coverage, no coverage on little or no coverage on X, right? And all of those posts that were posted out there were buried. And from what I understand, again, this is like the story last week of the Israeli soldiers walking off the base. There's at least 4 different versions of it, right? So the moment it comes out, somebody reports it on X, almost immediately AI goes to work and bots go to work to change the story around. And look, I don't know anything about the shooter. I don't think anybody does. And this all occurred within a few minutes, and casualty count is still ambiguous. The shooter's supposedly dead. Police haven't really released a statement. I mean, you can go by the numbers and see how this is being suppressed. So yeah, Rob, I have a 5.7 in my safe out there. It's a TSASH 5.7, and it's a good weapon, right? And by the way, those FN-57s, they're $1,300. You can get them on sale very, very seldomly. They're not cheap. They're just not cheap. 5.7's a good round. It's but again, it's not a common round, so you're gonna have to have a stockpile of them. But anyway, I digress. The fact that this story has already been obfuscated and been changed by AI and by bots should tell you that this is probably a false flag that was perpetrated. And I'd like to know about the shooter. I'd like to know about what activated him. Notice how they never talk about what activates the shooter. They never talk about that. They talk about manifestos. They talk about, the mental illness, but they never talk about what was the trigger, right? What triggered this person? Was it violent video games? Was it SSRIs? Was it mental illness? Was it an FBI handler or a CIA handler? What was it? We've seen over the past 5 years that most of the shooters that have shown up are either trans or they had FBI handlers in the background. They had communication with the FBI just prior to it, and you can make the leap from there, right? So I wouldn't be surprised. And again, we're in the 48-hour rule, right? Late tomorrow is going to be the end of the 48-hour rule. So I would be curious to see what comes out, if anything, about the shooter and how much comes out about the shooter. So, and just like this Navy sub commander, I'm curious to see what the backstory is going to be. Um, so much of what we see is curated. So much of what we see, and by the way, to do this back in the 90s and in the mid 2000s, it took, a couple hundred people constantly online to generate a quarter of the traffic that bots and AI can generate just 24/7. And a good giveaway for accounts that are bots, look at how many posts they have in 24 hours. You can see how many posts they do. If you see over 100 posts, AI. And there's a bunch of them. And you'll see them, they're activated by specific talking points or topics. And if you use, like I said, use America's Greatest Ally in your feed, and you will see something drastic happen to your feed. And I do it every weekend. I'll go out for about an hour and in each platform just to see what I'm going to get back. The interesting one is Instagram and Snapchat. Those are really interesting platforms, right? So Snapchat is for ADHD, right? It's 15-second, 20-second videos. They put like commercials in there. If you have patience, that becomes annoying. But if you go look at the feed is curated with stuff that's absolute nonsense. It is all about vanity. It is all about wild conspiracies. Like, they go all the way to the extreme with the conspiracies. And you know why they do that? They do that to discredit anybody from looking at the conspiracies that have already been proven true and giving them any respect or any credibility. And it's a very insidious way they do it, because they load the feed with all of these wild claims that aren't based in reality. And then you get into the video and it's a 30-second or a minute long video about something that's not even on this planet or real. But that's how they do it. And it's repetitive. You see it throughout the feed, right? Instagram's the same way, all about vanity. If you look at all those accounts, if you look at all, especially between 14 and 30, all the accounts are the same. And by the way, ladies, what is with the fucking tongue? What is with sticking your tongue out every time you do a picture of yourself? What is that all about? Right? They all look the same. They all look the same because it's a group think, right? They get you into groupthink. They get you into group structure. All of those things affect culture, right? And all of it's, when you get down to it, all of it's incitement operations. All of it. It's influencing and incitement all at the same time, right? They're influencing you to go along with the crowd, go along to get along, right? And they do that through posting hundreds of the same types of pictures, the same types of poses, the same types of clothing. And I will tell you that probably in about a year, Instagram will be almost 90 to 100% AI driven. Every piece of content that you will see will be AI driven. And it will be driven based on whatever your browsing habits are, not your browsing habits in Instagram, your browsing habits on your browser. And I want you to think about how many times you've been in your car and you've spoken about a product. Next thing you know, Amazon's advertising it to you, or Facebook's advertising it to you on Facebook Marketplace, or you see some kind of a thread or an email based off that, right? So many different influencing operations going on all at the same time. And that's how they do it. They flood the entire system and the platform with at least your feed, and they can individualize it to whatever your browsing habits are, and they're looking at your emails, they're looking at your browsing habits, they're looking at all the different things you do on your phone or your laptop or your computer, and they're aggregating all those things and building a profile. It used to be called one-to-one marketing, and that one-to-one marketing would be used to send you very targeted ads, right? Amazon's exceptional at it. If you go browse something on Amazon, 24 hours later, you're getting an email saying, hey, are you still interested in this? Right? And they figured out the balance between a reminder and a prompt versus creepy. Like if you've been on Zillow, right? You look at a house and you get like 17 different emails about that house from Zillow within 24 hours. Okay, that's creepy, right? Amazon's dialed it back to where they've figured out exactly based on your shopping habits how long you go from browse to click. And they've got very targeted algorithms that do a yeoman's work to get you to buy things. It'll even lower the cost to a point where you think it's a reasonable buy. So you'll hit click. And if you apply that logic to everything you see in social media, you'll understand why so much of it is curated. And the important part to remember is don't assume anything you see is real until you can see it in multiple sources. Like I'll go out to revolver.news and like today there was an article on revolver.news. By the way, thanks, Michael, for that, because it was Longshot that sent it over. But a worker, I think she was American or European, went to either Greece or Spain to help these illegals come across the border. She got hooked up with some Afghan guy and he ended up killing her, stuffed her into a suitcase. So you're going to see more of that, by the way. You're going to see more of that, more of these liberal morons and useful idiots that are bought into the illusion, get smoked by the same barbarians they've let into the country. So anyway, my point is don't believe anything you see until you can corroborate it across 3 distinctly different platforms, not social media platforms. If something's real, you're going to see it. You'll probably see it on X or Instagram or Facebook first, and then you'll see it across other platforms. If you see it in the news, you know it's curated and it's probably CIA messaging. So that's why I say the 48-hour rule. Stay out of the emotional space, look at it objectively, and then see what evolves over 48 hours, and you'll see where they're taking the narrative. And you'll see other people drop bits of truth. And again, it's like 15-second videos and sound bites. You can't place any context around that because it's too short. It can be manipulated to the point where you hear only the things they want you to hear. You don't get any context with it, and they want you to react emotionally. So stay out of that space. Look at all of that with suspect eyes, because most of it is nonsense. The other thing that came out this weekend, which I think is very interesting, is if you pay Trump or the administration, and I don't know all the specifics of it, I just saw it in passing, but Trump has given early access to his press briefings. Okay, first of all, that's highly illegal. Second of all, it's a massive conflict of interest to what the president's supposed to be doing. And third, it tells me that everyone around Trump that's in the staff, they're all complete grifters, everyone around him. So I'm waiting to see how that story develops and what that develops into. But yeah, just like Fauci, it's a lot of noise at first. Everybody gets all excited. Everybody posts stuff, but nobody really takes a step back to look at, okay, what's going to happen with Fauci? First of all, he's got a pardon. We know the pardon is unconstitutional. The statute of limitations has run out, and Rand Paul made sure of that before he did his briefing, before he did his dog and pony show. We know the FBI is not going to do anything because Todd Blanche is basically Pam Bondi, Bill Barr, and Chris Wray all in one, basically useless. And we know that the FBI only goes after low-level players. They're not going to arrest anybody major. We also know that Susie Wiles was Big Pharma. She was a lobbyist for Big Pharma. So nothing's going to happen there that's going to affect Big Pharma. So why get wrapped up in it? Nothing's going to happen. Nobody's going to be held to account. It's just a big show trial. It's distraction, right? Notice how you don't hear anything about the NDAA. I'm going to keep beating the drum on the NDAA because they're probably not going to vote on it until October or November. But the truth of the matter is that's the most dangerous thing. I mean, if we're aside from if this nuke story grows into what I think it's probably going to grow into, you may see some very interesting disclosures come out of some former commanders in the Navy. But we'll see, right? We all signed NDAs when we left, right? Like we wouldn't talk about certain things that happen. We wouldn't talk about and divulge classified information. Anything that we talk about has to be open source, blah, 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 right? They're all going to sign that NDA. But if you look at our nuke inventory, we haven't updated our nuke inventory since the 60s. We haven't updated our launch control centers, at least the ground-based stuff, since the 90s. We haven't updated our bomber fleet since the B-2. And the B-2 has been around for 20 plus years. The B-52 is older than I am. It was made in the 50s. So you can do the math on how old our equipment is. And just so you know how they keep the B-52 flying, they basically take that thing to depot and reskin the whole airplane. They'll stress test everything. Like they'll go through and look for stress cracks. They'll replace anything, right? They've reskinned those airplanes so many different times. So our nuke inventory is old. We're not like the Russians, right? The Russians have been modernizing. That's one of the things they're very good at is iteration. We have to do the look at this cool stuff. We have to go all in with this really new high-speed weapon system, blah, blah, blah. Now it's the B-21 or whatever it is. Look, we haven't modernized it all. And if this Iran war shows you anything, it's that the air fleets of old, the manned bombers of old, those are gone. Those are going away. I anticipate the next air war will be all drones and all autonomous vehicles. I don't anticipate that we're going to put manned pilots into planes over enemy territory anytime soon. Why would you do that when you could put an aircraft or a near Earth orbit aircraft that can loiter for 20, 30 days over the same target? Why would you do that? You don't have to worry about, pilot fatigue. You don't have to worry about pilot comfort. All you do is put it up there and let it find a target and let it destroy the target, which, is dangerous at the same time because it can be used against us. But that's what I see them doing, and that's where I see this going. So we'll see what the next couple of days bring about this Navy commander removal. We'll see if there's any more information that comes out about the shooter. I discount anything Trump says, especially about Iran, because we know all that's been the week in, week out. The Friday big fat claim, we're going to destroy the world. Monday, they're begging for us not to attack, and they're begging for us to make a deal. And then Iran says, no, we're not. We're off to the races. Back to Friday. It's the same thing. So there's nothing new there. It's just the same rat-a-tat-tat. On the admin side, you can go out to the website, which is in the show notes, order the mugs. It seems that all of the payment systems are working. So if you have any issues there, let me know. I'll be back tomorrow at 1 o'clock with the daily update. We should be doing a roundtable on Thursday. It'll be a smaller crowd. So we'll be doing that, but I'll be back tomorrow at 1. Until then, God bless. One team, one fight.